viewers, welcome to yet another exciting episode of My Environment, My Future. Today we are privileged to be joined by Christina Malaki from the International Crane Foundation. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming through. So International Crane Foundation, let's start from there. What is International Crane Foundation all about?
So International Crane Foundation, as the name, Crane, is of course an international organization that is found in America, Asia, Africa, with its headquarters in Wisconsin. And so overall, globally, we have 15 types of cranes. And in Zambia, we have two types. That's the wattled crane and the gray-crowned crane. And they're commonly found in wetlands. And here in Zambia, we work on the Kafue Flats. And so our job is protecting these cranes, but not only the cranes, as well as the endemic Kafue lechwe. Endemic because it's just found, it's the type of lechwe that's only found on the Kafue Flats. So you see where you see the lechwe is where you see the cranes, because once the lechwe grazes or gets its food, what it leaves open is what the cranes come to eat. So the wattled crane is one of the endangered species. And so our job is to ensure that we raise awareness and protect its the crane itself as well as its habitat. And in so doing, you find yourself protecting the general, or the overall Kafue Flats or environment.
Oh, okay. So basically, International Crane Foundation advocates for environmental conservation as a whole, because you talked about the crane and you talked about the various other species. Is that okay?
Yes, one of the things that we are doing. So we work with 4 pillars, and the first one is community engagement, and that's where the environmental education falls. And then we have law enforcement, where we have a partnership, a 20-year partnership with the Department of National Parks and Wildlife to ensure that the law is enforced, because the Kafue Flats runs or is across 2 national parks. That's Loch-Niver National Park and Blue Lagoon National Park. And then the third pillar is the management plan. So just how we can manage the entire Kafue Flats. How can the animals benefit? How can we as human beings benefit? And then the fourth pillar is research and monitoring. So in research, we get to have do aerial surveys to see how the population of the Kafue lechwe and the wattled crane and gray-crowned crane. So environmental education, yes, is one of the things that we're doing on the Kafue Flats.
Oh, okay. In reference to environmental education as one of your 4 pillars, you say, how exactly do you, I don't know if it's you sensitize or you talk to the public about such endangered species? So on an educational, environmental educational aspect, how do you as a foundation carry it out?
So for environmental education, what we're doing is we are raising awareness to the community through the popularly known Chongololo and Chipembele conservation clubs. And this is in partnership with one of the organizations called the Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia, who are the overall overseers of these clubs countrywide. So then we work through these conservation clubs. We have a total of 18 on the Blue Lagoon side, and I think 9, if my math is correct, on the Loch-Niver side. So then we go, the learners during Clubs Day get to go through different topics with regards conservation, more especially wildlife management, water management, wetlands, they get to learn about the different types of habitats and how they can protect that. And then in turn, they reach out to the general community through plays, sketches. It could be during commemoration of environmental focus days, for example, World Wetlands Day in February, or World Wildlife Day, or World Environment Day in June. And also, we do work closely with CRBs, Community Resource Boards, and the chiefs as well. So we are in 7 chiefdoms. So that's the 7 chiefdoms surrounding the Kafue Flats. So we work with the chiefs, the headmen, or the community leaders to ensure that we reach out to the general community. And we also do some radio programs just so that we can raise awareness. Our end goal is to have that behavioral change. Yes.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was quite insightful, but you're going to have to hold your thought just there because we have a whole lot to talk about. Viewers, we are still here with Christina, and this is My Environment, My Future. Don't go away. Welcome back, viewers. This is My Environment, My Future, and I am joined with Christina. Christina, you talked about environmental education. So My Environment, My Future is basically a show that advocates for the environment. So in the most basic terms, what would you define environmental education as?
I like to call environmental education as the foundation of conservation, because what environmental education does is raise awareness on the different environmental issues. So before you can reach the point of, no, let's conserve, people have to understand what are they conserving, what is climate change, for example, what is wildlife management, what are all these things, and then it leads to conservation. So in a nutshell, environmental education just brings awareness and is the foundation of conservation.
Foundation of conservation. And you talked about climate change. I am very much intrigued when it comes to climate change. I don't know why, but I just find it quite to be an interesting topic. And since International Crane talks about environmental conservation, we are also going to include climate change because I am sure it affects our environment one way or another. As an environmental educator, I'm sure you are an environmental educator.
Yes.
What would you say climate change is?
In the most simpler terms, climate change is the change of normal weather conditions over a long period of time, and that period of time is 30 years in the most layman language you could use. So yes, climate change is the change of the normal weather patterns or normal conditions, atmospheric conditions, over a long period of time. Very different from weather, because then weather is the atmospheric change of the change in the weather, in the atmosphere, in a very short period of time. And that short period could be hours, minutes, days. So that's the difference between weather and climate change.
Thank you so much for that. Because climate change, I'm sure people would maybe just say climate change. Today it's raining, tomorrow it's not raining, and I think that's automatically climate change. But then that was just like weather difference. So now, what are the causes of climate change? Because I'm sure for anything to happen, there should be something that's pushing it to happen here. Yes. So what are the general causes of climate change, Christina?
The main cause of climate change, firstly, is, I would say climate change is mainly caused by anthropogenic activities, or in simpler terms, human activities. And the major cause of, the major anthropogenic activities that are leading to climate change are the emission of greenhouse gases, commonly known as GHGs. And then I would say the contributing causes would be the cutting down of trees, deforestation, would be the burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, I would say the using of charcoal energy instead. And then deforestation is caused by many things. It could be infrastructure development, charcoal burning, even harvesting caterpillars causes deforestation. So yes, those are the main causes and contributing causes to climate change.
Climate change. Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Christina. So now, International Crane Foundation. You earlier talked about it being an advocate for wildlife conservation. You talked about the crane, you talked about the leechwe. So now, if we were to connect climate change and environmental conservation, how does climate change affect you as a foundation when it comes to what you do, that is making sure wildlife is safe and so on and so forth? Climate change as a whole, how does it affect
wildlife?
Wildlife or environmental conservation per se. How?
Okay, so how climate change, the effects of climate change. There are many effects of climate change. a disturbance in the ecosystem, wildlife loss, soil erosion, floods, droughts. All those are effects of climate change. Now, when we come to the Kafue Flats, where the International Crane Foundation is working, what is happening there is because of these anthropogenic activities, because people are going to the flats to do fishing, or because there's too many floods. So then what happens is either the wildlife there dies or moves away. So there's a whole disturbance in the Kafue Flats is a habitat. So let's say, in simpler terms, your house today is flooded. You won't stay there. You move away. Others will die because of that flood, and that's what is happening to the wildlife and the ecosystem on the Kafue Flats. So there's loss of wildlife and also a disturbance in the ecosystem in general. And what that then leads to is, like I mentioned earlier, the Kafue Lechwe is endemic to the Kafue Flats. It's only found, you won't go to Bangweulu and find the Kafue Lechwe. It's only found there. And so then when you disturb the entire ecosystem and the population of the Kafue Lechwe starts to go down, firstly, the community would not benefit from wildlife. Because what the Department of National Parks and Wildlife does is they do give licenses to not only the outsiders, but also the community, to say you can hunt 5 or 10 or 50 lechwes, and then when you sell them as a community, you benefit. You eat them, well, the Kafue Lechwe meat is really tasty.
Okay.
And also when you have people come to hunt for the Kafue Lechwe, and it fetches a very high price. DNPW will tell you that it's very expensive. So when people come licensed, when you are licensed and go and hunt for the Kafue Lechwe, that money that is generated will benefit the community. There'll be hospitals built, there'll be schools built, but then if the population reduces, those benefits won't be seen. Also tourism, people will come from far and beyond to come and view the wildlife. But then if that is not there, then you won't be able to generate revenue or an income from wildlife. Yeah. And also goes for the crane. The crane is commonly, or the most population is found here in Zambia. So then if you destroy the ecosystem, then people want, what exciting thing will you have on the Kafue Flats to come and view? And just viewing that is revenue generation for the country. So that's what happens when you don't conserve or sustainably use the natural resources or share the Kafue Flats well with the animals.
Yeah, no, that's actually quite true. And then you talked about the effects of climate change in general, as in maybe fishing, for example. You find that, I don't know if you people say they migrate to another place, and then that's a situation where there's fish this time, and in the other season there's nothing like that. So now that's the general effects of climate change. Yeah. So Christina, we're going to go on a very short break, and then after that I want you to explain how we can sort of come up with remedies. I know we cannot completely combat climate change, but then where exactly can we start from? Yeah, so when we come back, viewers, we're going to talk about, with Christina, we're going to talk about how we can not really stop, but how we can mitigate the various effects of climate change. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. This is My Environment, My Future. So Christina, you were talking about the effects of climate change. And then now I just want you, in the most brief way, but in a very insightful way, to explain or give us mitigation measures. How can we mitigate the various effects of climate change?
Okay. So then this is where the whole mix-up comes in. The effects of climate change cannot be mitigated, however you adapt to them, because it's something that's already happening. It's happened. So how do you live in that world? And then the causes, what then you start to mitigate, because mitigation, so the solutions to climate change, in short, are mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation, you are reducing the causes. Like, how can you soften something? And then adaptation is where then we are already in this world. We already have floods. We already have rain coming late. So how do you adapt? So some of the mitigation measures that we can put in place, simple ones: plant a tree. The easiest trick I always tell people is, if it's your birthday, just say every year on my birthday I will plant a tree. By the time you're leaving this world, you'd have, because trees act as carbon sinks. They trap the carbon dioxide that is emitted. And we are cutting down trees. Of course, we need to use these trees, but then we need to use them sustainably. And alongside, we also need to plant trees. Another mitigation measure that you could do on your own personally is, you're going to the shop. I mean, we have home shops that are like 100 meters away from our houses. You're going to buy bread. Bread is already in a plastic. You don't need to ask the shopkeeper to give you another plastic.
Yeah.
Or when you're going to your shopping malls or whatever, your supermarkets, to buy things, you have that drawer or that bag that has 1,000 plastics. Just grab plastics from there, so that then you reduce the amount of plastics that you're using. Alternatively, you could go for the 3 R's, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. You could either reuse the plastic, you could reduce the using of plastics, or you could recycle the plastics that you already have. So those two are like the most common ones that you could do on your own. Just say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to plant a tree. I'm going to. We could also use manure in our garden instead of using the synthetic or the chemical fertilizers that will end up. They're good, but then in the long run, they destroy the soil. And there are a lot of organisms that are in the soil that help your plants grow. So what happens when you use the chemical fertilizer is they start to destroy the natural organisms, but then help your plant grow. But then in the long run, you'll be dependent on that chemical fertilizer. So because there's some organisms that will help reduce or help your plant survive certain conditions. So then what happens is, when you put your chemical fertilizer, you're removing those organisms that could help your plant grow. So sometimes you have backyard gardens, and we have all those nshimas, all those whatevers that we are throwing in the bin. Use that as your fertilizer. When we sweep our yards, we gather our leaves and make compost manure that you could use. That's a mitigation measure. And then when we come to adaptation measures, we talk about climate smart agriculture. Many are the times that you have this piece of land and you just want to cut down all the trees so that you can have that big space to have that. But then trees helps. There's certain trees that are very helpful in our fields. For example, the white thorn acacia, commonly known as munga, or munga. It's a thorny tree, and what happens is, when your plants grow, it shades its leaves, and so then there's direct sunlight that comes to you. It's not those trees that have leaves when your plants or when your crops are grown, and when it shades its leaves, those act as manure. So when you go to the southern part of Zambia, you see a lot of these trees in their fields, because now they have understood the value of those trees. So instead of cutting down these trees, let's practice climate smart agriculture, which also incorporates agroforestry, planting of trees. Another adaptation measure would be then to use things like solar electricity as opposed to hydro electricity. So yeah, there are many mitigation and adaptation measures which could help us either adapt to the impacts of climate change or mitigate to the
effects
causes
of
climate change.
Okay, no, that's very insightful, Christina. And in the most brief words again, what do you think are the leaders, like the leaders that we have today, what do you think they should do? Should they come up with policies? Should they come up with laws? What do you think they can do really to make sure that the effects of climate change, like you have explained, are something that we can adapt to, something that we can contain? What do you think our leaders should do?
Well, I would say that we do have policies that could help us figure out or navigate our way through this through the climate change issues. And so then what we need to do is really start to work towards those policies. As a country, we have very good policies, but then what we lack is implementing or putting into practice what is in those policies. We do attend the famous Conference of Parties. Last year we attended. This year we'll be going again, and I'm aware that there are preparations for COP27. Yeah, it'll be COP27 this year. There are preparations in place. So then what we really need to do, what the leaders really need to do, is to ensure that these policies are, like, action is made on these policies. But then we shouldn't just leave it to the leaders. I always emphasize that the fight against climate change should be personal. It should start at the personal level. Let's not say no, but the government, but let's individually, NGOs and the government should work together to ensure that we adapt and mitigate the impacts and causes of climate change. So working together and ensuring that the policies that we have put in place are actualized.
Okay. So basically the change begins with me.
The change
begins with you.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
No, thank you so much, Christina, for that. And for the viewers out there, they might be wondering, International Crane Foundation, where can we find International Crane Foundation? Are you on Facebook? Are you on any social media platform? Just kindly explain where exactly the viewers can find International Crane Foundation.
So our physical address is Roadspark 25, Plot 25, Joseph Mwilwa Road. And you can also find us on our social, it's not International Crane Foundation for Zambia, but then our global social media pages. On Facebook, we are International Crane Foundation. On LinkedIn, it's International Crane Foundation. On Instagram, it's Saving Cranes. And also because in Africa, we work in partnership with the Endangered Wildlife Trust, so you could also follow the Endangered Wildlife Trust Facebook page.
Okay.
You get to see our works in trying to protect the 15 species of cranes globally.
Okay. No, thank you so much, Christina. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation to be part of My Environment, My Future. We hope that very soon you're going to be back, and we are going to talk more about cranes and everything else that has to do with the environment.
Yes, very soon we'll be back.
Okay.
And we'll talk more about the interest in cranes.
Okay. No, thank you very much. So there you have it, viewers. You have heard from Christina to say change begins with you. Change begins with me. This has been My Environment, My Future with me, your host, Odala Piri. Do wait for yet another exciting episode of My Environment, My Future. Thank you.